Mrs. Maloney, the housekeeper at Belfort Grove, identified John Ward as a tenant at that address. Miss Rosie Willing testified to a slight acquaintance with her neighbour across the landing and denied all knowledge of his business or origin. Mr. Ross Lane testified that life was already extinct when he examined deceased, and the police surgeon gave a technical description of deceased's injuries. Finally, MacDonald entered the witness box and gave evidence as to his investigation into the identity of John Ward of Dulverton Place. He also stated the facts concerning Timothy O'Farrell's identity disc being found in the ruins of the shelter. After the inquest was over, MacDonald went back to the Commissioner's office to discuss the case with Colonel Ragley, the Assistant Commissioner. The latter had read MacDonald's report and found therein much food for thought.
"You have plenty of material to work on, MacDonald," said the grey-haired colonel. "There's no lack of suspects. You've got the conjurer with a circus training, the very fellow to bring off a crime of this kind if your assumption about the bike is well-founded. You got the civil defence chap who had a bike on the spot. You got the surgeon who put in such an opportune appearance, and the man Claydon who prevented Mallaig from starting off in pursuit."
In fairness, one should surely include Mallaig himself, who gave the only direct visual evidence as to what happened, said MacDonald. Any one of these could be regarded as suspect once we found any shadow of a motive or a connection with deceased. That's what's lacking. Until we learn more about the self-styled John Ward, we're not going to get very far. I'm hoping the daily papers will find room to insert John Ward's photograph. The only trouble is that if Ward were mixed up with the black market racket, no one will come forward to claim him as an acquaintance.
"How are you going to get around that, MacDonald? Wait and see if anything eventuates?"
"Provided waiting doesn't imply inactivity, yes," replied MacDonald. "But there are a number of questions to be considered immediately. One of the first is, why did a man who lived in the Notting Hill district go to St. Pancras Station to put a telephone call through at 10:30 in the morning? The same question applies to Claydon, but he can provide an answer. He lives near Euston, and his sister lived near Bedford. If he meant to go to stay with his sister, it was reasonable enough to go to St. Pancras, which is the station for Bedford trains."
"Are you assuming that John Ward also had relatives in Bedford?"
Colonel Ragley's question was in part facetious. He held with Kipling that the Scots are a great nation who cannot see other people's jokes. MacDonald was aware of the Assistant Commissioner's habit of thought on this subject, and he frequently infuriated Ragley by answering his rhetorical questions seriously. "I have no grounds for assuming that Ward had relatives in Bedford, sir, but I have sufficient reason to think that he may have used the LMS from St. Pancras. I think I made that implication in my report."
"Is that so? I'm afraid I missed the implication, then."
You will remember that Mallaig stated that Ward acted as one of the crowd in a film called The Night's Work. I've not yet had time to substantiate this statement, but it seemed quite probable that a man like Ward, who disliked and avoided regular work, would have been glad of the occasional guinea to be picked up by casual film jobs. It's worth remembering that Elstree, which has a film industry, is on the LMS line.
I see. A shot in the dark, MacDonald, but an intelligent shot."
"Less haphazard than a groundless assumption of relatives in Bedford," said MacDonald solemnly, and Ragley laughed.
All right. And so what, as my nieces and nephews are so fond of asking?"
"I'm putting Reeves on to the St. Pancras job. He's trying to find any of the station staff who can recognise Ward's photograph. In the event of my guess about Elstree proving wrong, I want to find out what he was doing at St. Pancras and with whom he was doing it."
"Why not try the Elstree studios direct?"
"Reeves is doing that, but the St. Pancras end is important for this reason. If Ward travelled with a friend or acquaintance, he may have said something about his rendezvous in Regent's Park. My argument is this. Either Ward was killed by the individual he had arranged to meet at the bridge, or by some other person who knew that Ward was going to be at the bridge."
"Why the either-or, MacDonald? Isn't it safe to assume that he was killed by the person he had arranged to meet?"
"The principal argument against that is that Ward's behaviour at the bridge was not that of a man who expects danger. It's true, according to Claydon's evidence, that Ward was truculent over the phone. He spoke with confidence, like a man who knows that he holds all the cards. But his choice of rendezvous and his behaviour when he got there give the impression that he was going to meet someone from whom violence was most improbable.